Okay, so today we're going to have a quick venture into the nodes room, the surface nodes, shader nodes rather, and we're just going to set up to do that. So I'm in the modelling room, or the modelling tab, and I could go to the shading tab to do this, but it seems to be a lot of wasted space over here. So just in the modelling tab, in the top left there, if you point with your cursor, it will turn into a little white cross. And just left click and drag that out, and that will create a split window for us. And then in this side, I'm going to use this button up here to go to the shader editor. Okay, so with that done, let's see where we are. Let's come out of edit mode here. Don't know why I'm in edit mode. And I just want to see that, or just want to check that with you that you have the node wrangler enabled. So under edit and preferences, just type up in this little search here under add-ons node, and you should see node wrangler. Just make sure it's ticked, because we're going to be doing a few things with it that are going to make life a bit easier. Okay, so starting off, the basis of almost all procedural textures is a black and white noise map, and Blender has a ton of them. I'm just going to end to hide that little rollout there, and then in some blank space I'm just going to click Shift and A, and under that we're going to texture, and then we'll pick noise. And with that noise texture, we just need to tell it how to project. If we let me just make sure I'm on the right material. I'm not on the right material, but oh no, perhaps I am. If I drag and drop that into colour, you'll see it projects onto our rock here, and we're just going to make like a very simple stone texture in this one, but it doesn't really allow us to change how it projects, and we can do that by clicking on the noise texture and then pressing Ctrl and T, and then Node Wrangler will add these two nodes, the texture coordinates and a mapping node. The texture coordinates lets us change how it projects, and since this is UV'd, I can go to the UV style. I've got a terrible UV on this, so I'm not going to use it, but I think what we're actually going to use is object, and that projects around the object, and it will take away seams and do good things for us. The mapping node will allow us to do all sorts of things in terms of changing scales and rotation, but we will get to that perhaps another time. So first of all, I just want to update this noise node we added, so I can increase the scale, and that will give me a finer texture, or a finer pattern. And then detail, I'm going to zoom in for this. Apparently I'm not. At low detail you get very few levels of grey. If I increase that, we will get more levels. If I put this back to a sensible scale, we might actually be able to see it. So at 16 I get a pattern like that, at 2 I get it like that, and it's not the it's a bit monotone, monocolour. With the extra detail, it gives you a more variation. Okay, so we have roughness and distortion will do what it says. It will distort the texture, so we can add a bit of distortion to get streaks and all sorts of things. I'm going to leave that at 0 for now. Okay, so that's setting up our first little string of nodes, and what we'll do in the next one is we'll use that noise node to add some colour into this texture. So I'll talk to you in the next section. Okay, so to add some colour to this, we need a colour ramp node. Now, if I press Shift A and then click on search, or press the S key, I can go into a search mode, and now I can type colour or ramp and pick the colour ramp node, and then drop it on this line that's connecting the noise texture to the shader node. And basically this is taking the output from here, from the noise texture, and processing it through our color ramp node, and it didn't actually change very much, you'll notice. But if I take this black and push it up, you'll see that we start to get more black, and if I take that back and push that more white, we'll go more white. And of course the answer is we want somewhere in the middle, usually. So what I'm going to do is take this black up, and then on this colour I'm going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to take that up so I can you know, pick an actual colour. I'm going to pick like a blue, a dark blue, and then I'm going to take the actual colour back down again. There we go. And for this white, this is going to cover pretty much most of the rest of the you know, of our boulder there. We'll click on there, and I'm going to go a little less dark and just a little hint of blue into it, and there we go. So I now have quite a subtle transition between those two, but I want to add a new colour in. So if I click the plus key, it will add between these two, and then I can change this. So if I change it to white, you'll see that actually quite a lot of it's going to change. And if I change this one back to white, you'll see it hardly changes at all. So let me take that down back to a blue-grey, and then this one make a slightly lighter, slightly off colour. I'm trying to match them so that, you know, the transition doesn't look really jarring. And I'm going to just move my sliders around until I get the kind of effect I want. So I don't want to move that too close there, because it, you know, just sharpens everything up. But I do want it a little closer, and I want this one. Actually, I want this to do something. So let's make it white, and we'll see what it's actually affecting. Well, very light blue anyway. So if I pull this one down a little bit, then this white one's going to have more influence. That's perfect. And then I can darken it up. There we go. So I've got 3 different shades going into my rather splotchy rock now. If you're not happy with the colours, change them. This one I think is a little too dark, so I'm going to bring it up a little. Try and get a nice kind of match between them all. There we go. So that's our first colour, and you know, it doesn't look terrific, but it looks better than it did. But we're not going to stop there, we're going to go further and further. And just before I do that, I'm just going to go into the render mode to have a look, see what it looks like. And I know this big blue patch here is coming from a cavity, so I know it's not just a big splodge. Yes, very subtle, there's not a lot of change in it. So yes, I'm happy with that. Okay, so the next one, we'll take it a step further and start to develop this to get a nice shader going. Talk to you then. Next then, we'll add some noise from our, some surface noise from our noise texture. And to do that, I'm just going to turn this off to give my PC a rest. We're going to take the output from here and pop it into normal, but we can't just put it straight into normal because this is black and white data, this is normal data. We need to convert it. And Blender has a really terrific node called bump. So if you press Shift and A and S and then type in bump, we'll pick the bump texture or the bump node. Now the bump node will take either normal or height data, and it will allow you to manipulate it. The height data it will convert to normal and allow you to plug it in. So let's take our FAC out of here, and then our normal into here, and now we've got some height data. So it's all a bit all over, but we will adjust that as we go. But what you can do here at the moment is take the strength down. So I'm just going to take the strength down to quite a low level to make it a little subtler. There we go. And I realise actually my shapes are perhaps a bit too big, so I might increase my scale back here. This is the perfect thing about shaders, you can always change as you go. So if I change that to 8, then I get a much more complex set of shapes there to work with. And because this is driving both the colour and the bump, it's matching both all at the same time. So let me take this down to 0.2, perhaps 0.25, yep, a little bit better. Okay, so let's have a look, see if that's made any difference in the render side of things. And yes, I can see more variation in the surface of the rock. It's picking up shadow from that normal data, which is perfect. So next we'll have a look at the roughness aspect. So we're going to make some of it a bit shinier than others, and then we'll go on from there. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let's have a look at our roughness and see if we can get some variation across our texture. So roughness I've got set to 1 currently. The default is 0, I've just messed about with it. Sorry, the default is 0.5. So if I take that down to 0.5, you'll see it becomes much less matte. We're getting some reflection of light, etc, etc. And if I take it down to 0, you'll see it becomes much more reflective, and I'm even getting some sort of distorted reflection of the sword in there. So we can control that with a black and white mask, or with a black and white image. So if I take FAC out of our noise texture and pop that into roughness, you'll see it changes. But not an awfully large amount. So if I press Shift Control and then click on this noise, it will add in a viewer and show me what my actual texture looks like. So currently my texture looks very white and very sort of grey, and that is, you know, basically driving our values for the roughness. But we can control those, much like we controlled the colours here. We use a colour ramp, so Shift A and then S and type in colour or ramp and pick it up and put it on the line between FAC and roughness. There we go. And you'll see nothing essentially changes, because if I Shift Control and click on there, we have the same map. Now if I take this white all the way down, you'll see it becomes bright white. And if I press Shift Control on the principal shader, you'll see now that it's very, very dull. And if I take that back up again and take the black very far up, we'll find that it becomes very shiny. So what we want to achieve is kind of somewhere in between the two. And I'm just going to Shift Control and click on there again so I can see what's going to happen. So I'm going to take my white down, not too far, but then I'm going to change it so it's kind of an upper grey, not, you know, somewhere between mid-grey, halfway, and white. And then let's have a look, see what happens. So if I Shift Control and click on the principal shader again, I'm starting to get some reflection in. And if I dial that further down, it should start to fade out a little. Please don't make me go all the way to the other side. Okay, it's distinctly possible, but my grey is not light enough. So I'm going to perhaps go halfway between the two again, and then I think that's quite a nice compromise. So let me take that right up. See, very shiny, very unrock-like unless it's wet. And then I'm going to take it right down to get just the right tint. Could even bring the black up if I wanted. Let's press Shift Control from there. you'll see, I mean, it's virtually white. The likelihood of it, actually being that white is fairly slim. There will be variations in there, it's just kind of blowing out. So let me press Shift Control, click on the main shader, and there we have it. Okay, so in the next few videos we're going to look to enhance this. We're going to add some detail, and we're going to actually use some data from the geometry to drive some of our texture. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so I want to add some more bump to this, not just our kind of quite regular boring noise. I want to add some bigger features. So for that we're going to add a new procedural node here. So we're going to press Shift A, and under texture, I think, let's have a look. So let's try Voronoi. I don't know how to say it, I do apologise. And I'm going to select that and press Shift Control and click on it to get a look at what it's going to do. And you'll see it's this quite nice, hexagon-y kind of irregular pattern. But what I do need to do is plug my vector into it so that I get it mapped properly. Okay, so we have a few options here. There's some kind of types of noise, and that's the one I want. I think distance to edge, and now we get a nice kind of hexagony pattern to it, and that's good. I like that. That's very nice. Now I could just add this into the bump, or I can actually just create a new bump node and then string them together. So with the bump selected, I'll press Shift and D, and that will create me a new one, and I'm going to put it between the original bump and the normal channel, because basically what this is doing is converting our original noise into a normal, and this normal is coming into here, and now this output is going to go into height, and it's going to add to our normal. So if I press Shift Control and click on this one, this is what our normal looks like. Now don't worry that it doesn't look like a normal map you might have seen, it's a different kind of normal. Okay, so let's go back to the main look, and now I've got a very lumpy rock, which is terrific, but I don't want it to be that lumpy. So we can change the scale, we can go up or down, it doesn't matter. We can increase and decrease the randomness, and even try a few different ones. Let's go back to F1 and see what we look like. I quite like that actually. That gives a nice kind of rigidness to it. I like it. Okay, so bear in mind that I do not want this to go over the whole texture. I want there to be some sort of blend. So what we're going to do in the next section is just make this a little bit more random and a little bit more broken. So basically it will still look like this, except we're going to make some areas not affected at all. Right, so I'll stop rambling and I'll talk to you in the next bit. Okay, so what I want to do is mask out some of this bump information. It's a bit too regular all over. I know it's random lines, but it's everywhere. So what I want for that is a noise node. So Shift A, search with the S key, and then type in noise, and then pick noise texture. And then I want to essentially mix these two together. Although I don't want to mix them, I just want to take this one and blank out bits based on this piece. And for that we need a mix RGB. So Shift A, S to search, type in RGB, and down the list we've got mix RGB. There we go. and I'm going to plug my distance from there into my colour 1, and I'm going to drag the FAC into the FAC. So basically, wherever this node decides or denotes, it's going to be white, and wherever else it's going to be this Voronoi texture. So if I press Shift Control and click on there, we'll see what it looks like currently. And if I go to the Voronoi, Shift Control click, that's what it looks like. So our cloud is dimming it out and fading it, but we want a bit more control. You'll hear me say that a lot. So what I'm going to do is put a colour ramp between these two. So Shift A, S, and ramp, and pop that between the two. And now I can squeeze my values together to get more of a mix. So if I squeeze my black up and squeeze my white down, I'm getting that original Voronoi texture really broken up. And now it's, you know, there's not a particularly straight line across the whole thing. So with that done, I'm going to take the colour output from that and put it into the height of my second bump, and then on the principled, Shift Control click, and that's what we've got. So that's what it has turned out at. That's it without that second bump completely, and that's it with the straight Voronoi texture. So yes, I'm very happy with that. That works quite nicely. Okay, so that's it for that. We've mixed a few bits together, but I still want to bring it further. So in the next section we'll add some more nodes and make it look even more different. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. It's looking quite nice. Just to note, I didn't really mess with them too much after I'd added them, but we can of course increase the strength of either of our bumps to get a different effect. So if I take that up a little bit but not quite so far, you'll see it has more of an effect. And if I take this one right up, it has, yeah, more of an effect. I don't know how many other ways I'd say that. So yeah, just a note, so you know, feel free to press buttons, you know, do what you want to do. Okay, so I wanted to add some geometry information to this, and what we're going to do is add a new node in, and for this node, Shift A, we want a geometry node, so S and GOEM, and then pop a geometry node in. Now this geometry node will take some data from here and allow us to use it to drive information. So the one we're going to use is pointiness, which is a kind of a way of saying highlighting the peaks and low lighting the cavities. So if I take my pointiness data here, let me duplicate this colour ramp first, Shift D, and pop that there. If I take this pointiness data in and then press Control Shift click to view it, my PC is slowing down. It's very subtle, but you can see there are some lighter bits and there are some darker bits, and what we need to do is crush our black and our whites together, or possibly further apart, to further accentuate that. And now I have, you know, a light area and a dark area that I can use to drive the colour of my piece. So I'm going to drag these up towards the top, and I think what I'm going to do is mix it into our original noise texture. So let's grab that, pop that there, and then in here I'll put Shift A, S, and then mix RGB. Once I remember how to type, there we go, and I'll pop that there. So I'll take my colour into colour 1, whoops, and my FAC into colour 2, and then Control Shift and look at this. Okay, so we have a mix factor, so I can turn it up or I can turn it down. So down will go to colour 1 and up will go to colour 2. But we don't just have mix to work with, we can use, for example, multiply. And I can still adjust my factor. And I think somewhere around there is what I want. Because you see I've got some splotchy bits from our noise texture, and I've got some dark bits and some light bits from our pointiness data. And if I plug that into our colour ramp now, Shift Control click, that's what it looks like. Don't let it fool you. It generally looks not how it looks in the render. So Shift Control click on there, and that's what we get in the end. The bump may be obscuring it a little bit, so I'm just going to take it back. Let's take that one back as well. And then let's have a look on this actually, because I think it's not fooling me as much as I think it might be. So let me take this up and this down and make this white. There we go. Now I can see what's going on. If I go too up on the dark, it goes too dark. If I go too far down there, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm liking that. And let's have a look at this one. No, that was good where it was. There we go. And so I've just had to change my colours essentially, which is not the end of the world. So Shift Control click, and there we go. That's what it looks like. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite happy. I've got one last node to show you before we finish this particular, tour around the nodes room, and that's ambient occlusion, and I'll show you that in the next section. Okay, so ambient occlusion then. If I press Shift A and S, it will come up as the first one. I can drop that into the nodes there, and you'll see we have a few options here. How many samples, whether it's inside, outside, or whether it's local only. And if I Shift Control click on that, you'll see what we get, and it's not an awful lot. Actually, I want the AO channel. There we go. So it's really subtle. What do we do with subtle things? We use a colour ramp. Of course we do. So Shift A and search, type in ramp. Oops, that's not a ramp. Try that again. Okay, let's try and get the right one this time. There we go. And I don't know where the AO is going. Oh, it's going to the viewer. Okay. So I'll take that and put that over in the FAC, and then Shift Control click on there, and we'll see what we've got. Okay, so if I take the blacks up, as I go, it's going to get more and more dark where there's occlusion. You'll notice there's a lot of darkness around the bottom, and that's because we have local only off. If I turn this to local only, it's only going to take itself into account, but because I have objects around it that are going to affect it, it's going to take that into account. So I really want that to happen, so let's have it. And I can crush the white down, and that is essentially going to give me a shorter range of colours, so I'm going to leave it up just for fun. Samples, we've got a lot of kind of graininess in this, so if I up the samples to 32, we should see that the graininess starts to resolve, and of course take it up as high as looks good, or your machine can take, whichever one it gets first. and I'm just going to let that resolve a second. There we go. And then we can use this to influence our original colour. So what I want is a multiply again. So I've got one here, so I can press Shift D with that selected, and I'm going to pop it between the colour and the viewer, and then I'm going to take the original colour ramp and put it into the other one, and you'll see that with the multiply that's done quite well. See, I've got a lot more darkness around the bottom. Might be too dark in fairness, but we can adjust that. So if I click on the black here and take it to somewhere below mid grey, you'll see it starts to be a bit more subtle, and it's just about finding the kind of look that you're happy with. And I don't want it too dark, and I don't want it too light, so I'm going somewhere towards dark but not all the way, and it just adds that little bit of extra to your texture. So that's in the viewer currently. I want it to be in the base colour, so there we go, and let's just switch this over to see what it looks like in the end. But I've got a lot of darkness in this scene, so yeah, not all the touches I've done are really helping me in this scene, but I wanted to show you through a few little tips and tricks. So mixing nodes together using mix nodes, mix RGB with either mix or multiply, or any combination that you can find, and then using the pointiness and the AO to just add a little extra touch. So that's it essentially for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in another set.